University, is it all it's cracked up to be? Did you go to university? Did you come out with a qualification but felt now maybe you didn't need it? Maybe you ended up with a Hecs debt that you had to pay off for a while that probably wasn't necessarily worth it for what you got out of it? And maybe that feeling is exacerbated now with your kids going to university, now that the Hecs debt and the way that everything's worked out and the indexation, etc. It means that a lot of kids are getting themselves into an incredible level of debt by studying at university, and perhaps still walking away finding that they could have done better perhaps by pursuing other avenues. Well, that's certainly the philosophy of Australian businessman Jim Penman. Jim wants Aussie school leavers about to start uni to maybe give it some long, hard thought and consider whether it really is the right path. Jim, the founder of the Jim's Group, Jim's mowing, Jim's window washing, Jim's computer repairs, Jim's just about everything else. Jim reckons Hecs debt is stopping a lot of young people from getting into the housing market, and the debt, as I mentioned, that they're being lumbered with, is putting a lot of young people into incredible hardship. They end up with a Hecs debt that's going to take, in some cases, virtually the best part of their working lives to pay off. Let's talk it over a little bit more. Jim Penman joins me. Jim, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning.
Jim, I apologise. There are too many Jims, different services to reel off, but I know there are a lot of them.
Well, I couldn't even name all of them, as you probably understand.
I had a feeling you might say that. Tell me, though, I mean, people certainly see them and know them, but I'm intrigued with your thoughts on this. Tell me, what was the impetus for you to come out and suggest that, for a lot of young kids going to university, it's not necessarily the right path? What was the impetus for this?
Well, a lot of that's the first-hand account of people who become franchisees, those who haven't gone to university and done incredibly well. One of our top franchisors now, about to open in America, is actually a guy who dropped out of school at 16. He's a high school dropout, went to work for McDonald's, bought a franchise. Now he's a multimillionaire in his early 30s. And that's not an unusual story. And what you also find, too, is that people who come from corporate background, who spent their whole lives with education going up the corporate ladder, actually buy a franchise, and they're so much happier and better off, and they make more money.
So not only is, you're sort of saying that not only is university not necessarily the be-all and end-all, but so is the standard path of sort of corporate life and the standard career path that often stems from university study.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I've got my own personal story. I spent 10 years at university earning myself a PhD in history and ended up mowing lawns for a living, which turned out to be a really, really good career path. Not the history, but the lawn mowing.
Tell me, though, at what point, though, I mean, for you, and that's an interesting, sort of example, it comes from your own experience. At what point did you realise, or what made you not tap into what you had been studying at university, but take a completely different path? What was the motivation for that?
Well, I was interested in the subject I was studying. I was developing a theory of history and society, which I thought was important. And I'm still pursuing that with the research institute that I'm funding. But it became clear to me that the academic career I wanted was just not in. And I was never tempted to join the corporate rat race. I always think being self-employed is so much better. It's more flexible. There's more room for growth. There's no limit. There's nobody saying, hey, you're this good, but no further. I'll make my own decisions.
Do you find, though, or do you think that for a lot of people, and for a lot of employers, in fact, a university degree has almost just become a way of sorting the wheat from the chaff, a way of creating a short list of applicants for a job rather than an actual definite measure of someone's suitability for a job?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, if an employer's got 100 applicants for a job, it looks at it as, okay, here's 60 that haven't got a university degree, here's 40 that have. The 40 that have at least spent 3 or 4 years sitting doing something, they've known nothing of value, but they've shown themselves able to sit down and do it and pass some exams. So it's a bit of a sorting mechanism. It doesn't actually teach you anything. There's a wonderful book by a guy called Brian Kaplan called The Case Against Education, which I'd recommend anybody to read. And he simply points out that what education mostly does is give you a step up over somebody else. You don't learn anything. A person who goes to university for 2.5 years and doesn't graduate has effectively no better chance of success in life than somebody who didn't go to university in the first place. It's what's called the parchment effect. It's just that stamp that says, hey, you spent 3 years studying something useless.
I guess some people listening might put it to you, Jim, though, that it sounds like you're saying, your philosophy seems to come from the thinking that, to create wealth or to end up in the best paying position is the main end goal that people should be striving for. I mean, some people might say that going to university gives them a certain career, and even if it doesn't pay well, and even if they end up with a debt, they're still sort of using their talents for the best use that they have. What would you say to that?
Well, if somebody really wants a white-collar job, I mean, if you want to be an engineer or a doctor or something, you've obviously got to do some study.
Sure.
Not questioning that. But the question is whether you want an arts degree done. And every indication are that people don't learn enough in those degrees to give them any help. It doesn't educate their mind. They're not more open-minded. They're actually, in fact, more rigid in a lot of ways because they get indoctrinated in very narrow ways of thinking. They're no happier. If you look at the happiest careers, actually, and there's multiple studies done, and you find people like gardeners and florists and construction workers do very well, and bankers and lawyers do very poorly. So it's not. Why would you do it? And it's not even as though it's necessarily well paying. There's a wonderful book called The Millionaire Next Door. It's about American millionaires, and they are not typically people with white collar occupations. They're typically people like me who have studied trade businesses and built them.
It's interesting. You're sort of saying that those who perhaps don't complete a degree, or those who complete a degree that's a little bit more, ambiguous in terms of what it can be channeled into, like an arts degree. You use that example. Don't end up any better off. I mean, again, the argument could be put that they've learnt a more critical way of thinking. They look on the world with a slightly more sort of critical viewpoint. Did you not feel that your university study gave you at least that different perspective or different way or more critical way of thinking?
I was a very unusual student. I virtually, at the end of my undergraduate career, I simply said to the lecturers, hey, I want to study some different stuff. Is that okay? I just submit essays every now and then. They said, all right. It was a relaxed place I went to. So, no, I don't think it helps at all. My impression is not that university undergraduates do not learn any critical thinking at all. They become more narrow and bigoted and prejudiced than they possibly were in the past. There is no more bigoted than a university-trained leftist. I mean, come on.
A few people called in and said they want to know what university you went to.
Latrobe University. University in Melbourne. Yeah.
Fair enough. It might be more the time rather than the university, I guess, in terms of sort of the lax approach that you mentioned. But interesting. Tell me, I mean, overall, I mean, you've considered and as you should, that there are some careers that obviously you have to do further study for. But if it's possible to sum it up, and I'm sure a lot of people are thinking you're absolutely spot on, but to sum it up, who would you, in your opinion, who should go to university and who absolutely shouldn't, if it's possible to make it that black and white?
Do you want a profession like dentistry or medicine or law or those kind of things? Definitely, you have to go, no question. Engineering, we need people like that. Universities have a valuable role in that area. If you are a good student, if you like that sort of white-collar studying kind of thing, it's also not a bad idea to go into the thing. But the trouble is you've got a lot of people today, young people today, who are, particularly boys, I must say, who are not education-minded. They're just not naturally suited to that. And I'm actually pleased. Two of my children, one of them has actually been at university and is starting a removals company, June's Removals, and she's going to do brilliantly. And my youngest son, too, I mean, he's looking at becoming a builder, a carpenter, like his mother. And I'm just delighted because the point is, what are you interested in doing? What do you want to do? I'm the kind of person that likes to do physical stuff. I mean, one of my hobbies still is gardening. I love being outside. I love doing things with my hand. I'm not really suited to a white-collar job. And so if you like that, if you're practically minded, if you like playing with cars or you like doing physical things, why not go out and get a trade? It's a fantastic opportunity. You can make very good money. Tradies, in our system, we look at $70 an hour as a minimum that people should be able to earn doing that kind of business, $70 an hour. There's not many white-collar workers make that, and you've got your own business, it's flexible, and there's no upper limit. What is not to like about that? If you've got the white-collar mentality, sure, go for it. If you don't, think about the alternatives.
It's interesting because 30 years ago or so, trades were sold as very much an option. You know, you either you reached year 10 at school or whatever, and you if you wanted to follow a trade, then you left at that stage. Or I guess now maybe you took on a school-based apprenticeship. If you wanted to go the academic route, well, you stayed on till year 12. Now that seems to be not promoted as much of an option as it once was.
Yeah, and it's sad because we're desperate for skilled workers. We need more skilled, and we need more carpenters and plumbers and electricians. I do not see the world crying out for more sociologists and art historians.
Jim, it's an interesting perspective. I very much appreciate your viewpoint on it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Jim Penman there of the Jim's Group. Basically just saying that Hecs debt is stopping a lot of young people from getting into the housing market. The debt is making life incredibly difficult, and a lot of people end up at university who perhaps are better suited to more practical work and service roles, and maybe going into things like trades or, as Jim was saying there, franchises, run their own business where they work in the business and perhaps make just as much money. Interesting viewpoint. If you'd like to comment, if you'd like to share your thoughts on that, you can flip me a text 0487 993 222, 0487 993 222.